So today I'm Mr. Rodder's neighborhood. It's a bit of a disappointment somewhat. I've been waiting to take this super stock motor to the dyno. I set it all up in July. Unfortunately, the dyno operator didn't feel the same sense of excitement and enthusiasm that I did. And it was supposed to be there the first week of December. Now I loaded it up the last weekend of November, Thanksgiving weekend, in the back of my truck, and it's been sitting there pretty much ever since. And what's become, the first week of December became the next week in December, and then the third week in December, and then Christmas week in December, and then here we are into the second week of January, and I just got it today, same thing, right? So I decided, well, okay, I'm trying to do too much. If I put it on the dyno and it doesn't make the numbers that I want, what do? What can you do? Nothing. I mean, do I strip it down? Do I start building another motor? Who knows? So I decided, well, I guess that whole thing is moot. Really we wanted some numbers, but the problem is I can't get any numbers. The dyno supposedly broke the last week in December, and so now I'm just kind of stuck in limbo. Well, instead of being in I guess dyno shop purgatory, because I've been in machine shop purgatory and body shop purgatory, never dyno shop purgatory, but that apparently is where I just came from. Sucks just as much as the other two, I'll be honest. So I opened up the back of my truck, and it's been raining here for about, I don't know, on and off for about 3 weeks. And unfortunately, my super stock Buick is pretty dang rusty now. I was really disappointed. I was supposed to be at the dyno, get a number, and come back, drop the motor in the car, check everything for fitment, and still continue on with fabrication work. Well, now I just said, screw it. We're going to go ahead and pull it out of the back of my truck. It's got some rust on it. Okay, so does the car. And we're going to drop it in the car, and we're going to finish everything up for fitment. Okay? And then I got to pull it back out anyway, because I got to do a bunch of little things to make it all kind of fit right and nice and snuggly and all the fun stuff. But now I'm no longer stuck. I can't just wait on stuff, right? Because the engine was in the back of my truck, I couldn't throw the rear end in the back of my truck and I haul it out to Chris Cox at Fab Race Mod Repeat. And it was just like a snowball of crap. So what do you do when you get hung up in these things? It takes your enthusiasm, yeah, for sure. It takes your excitement away, 100%. But what's important? So I decided, screw it. We're going to kick the whole dyno thing to the curb. We're taking it to the drag strip. We're going to be able to get a dyno idea on it at that point, especially when it's mile an hour across the 8th mile, right? So that'll kind of give you an idea. The other thing is, why does everyone have to dyno it first and then put it in the car? Well, that's a good question. What if I just put it in the car, ran some passes on it, let everybody guess what the number's going to be, and then we pull it out and find some place that's going to dyno it. Now, I did call 5 to probably 8 other dyno shops. Some of them are just too far away. It really is not cost effective for me. If I got to spend $500 in fuel and then $500 to dyno it, was that really worthwhile? No, that's a lot of money that I could put in the car to get it done. So we'll just do everything backwards. We'll get the cart before the horse intentionally, and maybe we'll have something fun with it. Who knows? Regardless, we're going to get back on the Super Stock Buick project. Well, last time we left off, the Super Stocker, I was kind of fitting some original Krager Super Tricks, and then I realized it just didn't fit the car. So I did run out and I bought a set of, these are original direct drill Krager SS's. They don't have the unilug, it's direct drill. And then I had to lengthen the wheel studs to make it work on this combo, but now essentially it's together for the last fitment period. Then I'll go through, do the brakes real quick once I get a master cylinder in and a rear end in it, so that you actually know if the brakes are going to work. But that's what I'm doing now. Let's see, I got the transmission tunnel cut out like I said, and we have a steering wheel again, and it seems to function. Yay. And then I got 3 pedals in there now. So I got the pedal bucket finished up, fabbed it all up. and completed the work on it, right? So your brake, your clutch, and well, your gas pedal doesn't have anything hooked up to it, but I now have a 3-pedal 1963 Buick Skylark. That's about the extent of it. So once I get the engine mounted in there and the transmission behind it, and I found out you cannot put them in engine and transmission together because of this cross steer. When I originally mocked up the oil pan or the engine in the car with the oil pan, it was just impossible. It catches on the lip of the blow-proof bell housing on that drag link. So you can't really do anything about it. So I'm just going to drop the motor in here, and then I'm going to crawl up under it and fit the transmission in there. Maybe I can get a cross member made, and with the engine sitting in there, maybe I can get the hood fitted on it and figure out where the scoop needs to go. So stay tuned. So here's the Super Stalker as she sits today. You can see the bare spot on the block where I had not painted it is rusted to death. A lot of the head studs are starting to rust. None of the cheap Chinesium chrome is starting to rust. But little things is kind of pissing me off. And look at the flywheel here. Okay, and this is a billet steel flywheel, so it probably has a lot less iron content in it, but it's still starting to rust. Look at the crank. God, the crank looks freaking terrible right there. But I mean, if this was a beauty contest, I already lost. I mean, look at the car. So in reality, we're gonna get it back going forward instead of just dragging our feet on it. Some of the stuff just disgusts me a little bit, but no big deal. We'll get it dropped into our engine bay today. So you can see I can cut the firewall out, cut half of the transmission tunnel out, and hopefully everything is pretty close. I haven't test fit this motor in here since I originally test fit it for the pan. One thing I did figure out is the 215 motor mounts actually hit this. There's a machined lip on the block here. They actually hit this machined lip. So what I did was I spaced them out with some washers. I'll probably end up pulling these motor mounts off, putting a 1/4-inch plate behind them, tack it into place, and then drill some holes. And that way I can still use these motor mounts. Now, hear me out, because a lot of people are gonna go, hey man, that's a 215 motor mount and it's gonna get shredded. Yeah, it probably would. But this is really just to get the engine in place. The other thing is, this is what's gonna put the engine in the original place so that I can get the transmission and everything set up and the linkage for the transmission and the clutch. The other thing is, I'm gonna put it in the car with these, but then I am gonna put some torque straps on the whole motor. So hopefully those live a little bit longer than what I was expecting. And I'll come up with some kind of device that's gonna keep it from getting absolutely destroyed just by revving it up in the car. So remember, them things are probably made for about like 250 foot-pounds of torque or something. So this motor probably makes that just sitting here on the motor crane. So, but we're gonna get it dropped in here today, and that's kind of the plan, so stick around. I know this looks funky like a superimposed picture, but trust me, it's not. We're gonna get to work and try to drop this engine into the engine bay. Okay, so this is basically how it's going to sit in here. I gave it 2 degrees of downward angle toward the rear. All I did was, this is kind of just eyeballing it. I just went off the fender, and because of the angle of the car, it's jacked up because I was going to pull the rear end and gas tank and stuff out of it. And plus, it makes it easier to install the engine when you angle the car up like this. So it's at about 9 degrees on the fender. So all I did was set the carburetor here to 7 degrees and give it 2 degrees down angle. Is really all I'm looking at. So that's kind of how it's going to sit in the car. Now I'll run you around and I'll show you I did the oil pan fitment. It took me forever to get this motor mount over here. It got hung up on the actual mount. The frame mount got hung up on the mount. It didn't want to slide or move, and it just made it a giant pain in the butt to try to get the dang bolt in. But I finally got it broke loose, and then I kind of got it in place. So let's get to, I'll show you what's going on with this. All right, using the light. Okay, so we'll go under there from the rear. All right. Okay, so I had to make this oil pan, right? You guys all know that. You saw me do it. I left very little room between the oil pan and the cross member. It's like literally about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, now that's front to rear. Okay, so you don't have to really be too concerned with that. But you can see it's so tight that when the motor was hanging down, it was actually up in the grease of the that's hanging on the cross member still. So it is really close. I left no room for anything else really, but it does fit well. My the steering bar here for the drag link, or the center link, or whatever you want to call it, is well within distance of the pan. So I don't know how well you can see it, but there is quite a bit of distance there. It's probably a good 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches clear. So, but I left no room really. Where it's the worst is actually up front. Okay. All right. It is literally like within 1/8 of an inch of that oil pan, the cross member is. Okay, and that may have actually been my problem getting it on there. I don't know. It looks like it might actually be sitting on it now. So it is really, really, really tight. It was only about 1/8 of an inch. And like I said, that might be my issue. It might actually be sitting on it now, the way I dropped it in here, and it didn't want to go to that one side. So it's really, really close. When I pull it out, I'll know for a fact if that's the issue. And then from there, I'll look at trying to bring it up. So maybe I don't know, 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. But I wanted to have as much room, or I wanted to have as much oil in it as possible. And to do that, you have to make you have to have an oil pan that will support it. And since I had to make one, I wasn't going to leave anything on the table. So it looks like I might have taken too much. Other than that, though, it looks like a giant honking motor in this engine bay. And what's funny is this engine is only it's the same length, exact same length as a 215 with the same bore centers. The only difference is the deck height is much taller, which makes the engine look much wider. The other thing is the heads are taller, right? So I have to fabricate headers in here. Now it doesn't look like it's going to be too bad right here for number one, number one, but it starts to get really, really tight as you go back, because you got your steering box starts getting in the way, and then back here is your actual steering shaft. And this is the emergency brake cable, but it just fits right over the exhaust port, which may give me enough room to slide something by there. I might be able to run the headers underneath like I was hoping to. So we'll take the Oldsmobiles, make them into Buicks, and make them fit on here. Okay, for the passenger side, because you don't have that steering box and none of that stuff, It's actually pretty roomy. It's not too bad. I can easily get headers in on this side. Shouldn't be much of an issue. Okay, so now for, what I had to remove. Okay, so this thing, if you, it looks like it's plenty of room now, but when I get the bell housing on there, that blow-proof Lakewood, there is very little room. It actually hits on all kinds of stuff, and hopefully I've cut most of that out now, and I can start reinstalling the transmission tunnel, and we'll be almost there. But now that I got the engine sitting in here, now it's just move forward and hang your transmission on there. So we'll see what happens. All right, well, stay tuned, and I'll give you an update in a couple of days. Thanks for tuning in. Share, like, and subscribe.